Okay, everybody, we're ready to get started. Welcome to the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, January 28th. The board has been in executive session discussing employment history of particular persons, litigation, and receiving advice from counsel, subject to board approval. So can I have a motion to open the public meeting? All in favor? Please stand for the pledge. Okay. President's report is where we're going to start today. And the thing I'm going to call out tonight that I want to express some appreciation for is a little bit personal, and it's just by luck that this happens to be the case, that believe it or not, it's the start of 2025, and that means people are already thinking about their planning for next year. And so 8th graders are getting schooled on how to get ready for 9th grade. Juniors are getting college support stuff, and so I'm noticing, because it's in my house at both levels, how much time and care is being put into working out all those different pieces. So that's counselors, teachers, admin, board support, all kinds of things going on. So just a shout out to all of the prep. I think a lot of it's behind the scenes, but it's a hard thing to figure out, and I can see the benefit of it. So that's my moment of gratitude for tonight that I typically do. On the agenda tonight, we're starting something new that I hope we'll get in the habit of doing in subsequent years, and that is kind of a mid-year update from the district team about a whole range of strategic priorities. So literacy work, equity work, I'm probably forgetting another one, strategic plan, and so we're going to kind of bundle that all together tonight and get updates, and the board will have a chance to ask questions, and that's the bulk of what today's meeting is about. So with that, just a big thanks to the administrative team for consolidating all this together. Over to you.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I
the
forgot.
calendar, yes.
I always do this. I'm so sorry. I got to do the calendar. We have a 1.1.1 resolution that the board is going to adopt a revised calendar. We're shifting the date of one board meeting in March. So can I have a motion to adopt that revision to the calendar?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Sorry, Lisa.
Okay, great. So we're going to start with the community update, and then we're going to move into the mid-year presentation. So Adam actually has the clicker for me this evening, because I'm going to want to keep on pace with trying to go through the mid-year update in an efficient way. But before we do that, I'd like Josh to just explain to the board and the community our BOCES cross-contract language on the agenda. You want to move this slide?
So New York State Education Law 2D is all about data privacy and security. Many companies sign direct agreements with us to protect our student data. Many sign with our local BOCES. Google will only sign one for New York State. They won't negotiate with any other locale about their data privacy. So in order for us to continue to use Google services with our students, we need to both cross-contract with Erie 1 BOCES and RIC 1. So there's a resolution for that, and then adopt Erie 1 and RIC 1's Google data privacy policy, which will cover us for the next 5 years to continue using Google's services with our students and protect our students with the stringent data privacy laws of New York State.
Thank you, Josh. And now Adam is going to talk about the micro grant on the agenda.
Alrighty, so you'll see a self grant. Often you'll see CSF grants, but this one actually is not from the CSF. It's from the Children's Environmental Literacy Foundation. It was written by Dana Stein-Dintz from Bell Middle School, and it's for $425 for topsoil test kits and a composter for the Bell Garden. So you'll find that on the agenda. It looks like I didn't update the slide, so I don't know if it's what 5 point. I did the slide before the agenda was complete, but you'll find it on the agenda there under the 5s.
And then the next slide, I just want to remind the community, we have sent this out a few times, that we have Katie Greer coming to do a presentation on February 11th for our middle school students and for our parents on screen time and mental health, social media awareness, privacy and data protection. And what it means to have a digital footprint. And before the Katie Greer family presentation at 5:15, Adam is working with our faculty to have a panel available for our families K through 12, just to understand how we're using technology in our school district. And this came out of the parent coffees that the board and I participated in at the building level. There were a lot of questions, and so we felt like this would be a helpful opportunity for families just to understand better how we're using technology across the curriculum, particularly at the elementary level. And then the next update is we had been working for a year to trademark our name, and we've accomplished that task. So Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then I can talk about what our next steps are now that we've received a trademark.
So like Christine just said, about a year and a half, we've been working to trademark the names of our 6 schools as well as the Chappaqua Central School District, so that if anybody is going to use our name or our likeness in any way, shape, or form, they need to seek permission from the school district before creating any apparel, before using anything on any flyers, and using our logos. So we have completed that process. We have the certificates, and so that all of our names are now registered trademarks. It also gives us the ability that if we see our name being used in places that are not sanctioned or approved by the school district, we now have an avenue to have a conversation with those organizations to ask them to stop using our name, our logos, and our likeness.
So our next step is the policy committee is going to need to meet, and we'll have to develop a policy around this. And I don't want our parents who are creating apparel for like our sports teams or to worry about this at this point, like we're trademarked. Pull it up. No, we're going to talk about like how to create a policy that's flexible enough so that can continue to happen, but also allows us to take action if we have some concerns with how our name is being used. And that was really the intent behind moving forward in this direction. Other school districts have done it. It takes a long time to have it actually be completed. And so thank you, Josh, for following through on that. And then we just wanted to highlight, tomorrow we're off for Lunar New Year. Happy New Year to our families who are celebrating. And then we start to begin our transition meetings, as Ryan had mentioned, and we have different opportunities for people to, in our theater program, we have the Harlem Wizards coming this weekend. Some people up here are playing in that game, which will be great. And then, as I mentioned, we have our technology day and night on February 11th, and then our next board meeting is on the 12th. So now we're going to move into our mid-year update. And so I plan on going through the presentation, and then if it's okay with the board, after there's not that many slides, then we can talk about some of what I presented. We can go back to slides, and then Jamie, Josh, Andrew, and Adam, they're all a part of these teams that I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes, and then we can all participate in the Q&A process. Is that okay? Okay. All right. So I want to start first by talking about the work that we had done last year. So the community knows that we are operating on a 5-year strategic plan, and we're addressing these specific areas and targeting them for improvement. And so last year, we made some decisions to begin planning for this work. So we completed a literacy audit, a demographic study, and a Princeton plan study that were presented at our last meeting. We had an electric bus study. We started a pre-K program, and some other things in our strategic planning that we were able to do last year was reducing our allocation towards fund balance to offset the budget. We revised our report cards, and we decreased our elementary class sizes, and we moved from a profile of a graduate to our student literacy. So this was work that was completed last year. And what we decided that we needed to do based off of the conversations we were having and planning forward, Adam, if you can move the slide, is that we created 3 teams that were made up of faculty and administrators to look at 3 specific areas of our work. So our strategic plan, our reading, and our literacy initiatives, and then our DET. And on our DET, we actually added parent members because that was a part of the recommendations from an audit that was done previously. And so these 3 teams have been working together to make some recommendations and decisions around how we can address a lot of what we see in our strategic plan, because that's like the envelope for everything that we are working towards. And so going into this year, we were implementing our pre-K pilot at Grathland Annex. We went into the year able to offer spring conferences for our elementary families. And then our life school at the high school began the accreditation process for the IB program. And so some of the groups focused work, even before we started, we knew would be like exploring world language at the elementary school, talking about different ways to increase rigor at the elementary, middle, and high school in grades 9 and 10, how we could generate revenue to reduce fund balance, but also to work on some projects that we have that still need to be funded in the capital realm, how we could begin to address some of the concerns and recommendations we received in the literacy audit, and then how to continue to increase student sense of belonging here in the district. And so we have our different opportunities to work together. We meet monthly, and sometimes we meet for a portion of the day, or sometimes we meet longer depending on what we're working on. And so we have our strategic fellows team, and we're really looking at 5 specific things: the middle school experience, world language, how to support new students because it's been identified as a need, the IB program and whether or not we should expand that K-10, and different funding sources to generate revenue. And some of what we've been doing is we've been gathering information from parents, from students in our faculty and focus groups. We've done some site visits that will continue into the spring. We've had experts come in and meet with this team. We have been compiling our data. We've been using AI to do that and sharing that out with the faculty, particularly at the middle level. And then we're arranged in different task force around these priority areas to make some recommendations, which I'll share with you in a minute. And then we have our district equity team, which has been established, and it's been in existence longer than the 2 fellowships. And this group has really been working on and worked on creating this cultural calendar, ways to embed some of the concepts that we saw in Unity Day within the actual academic program and in moments like National Inclusive School Week. So it wasn't like a standalone activity. Professional learning opportunities for not only the team, but the larger staff. And this group really looks at the student belonging data, and we did some focus groups with I want to say some discussion groups with our high school students in grades 9 through 12 to help us like think about how to plan forward to really help build those connections between students with each other and students with our staff as we work to try to create that sense of belonging. So we're really focused on like building-based work as in addition to district-based work. And this is like the one opportunity where we have parents come in and participate in the process with us directly as a part of our team. And a lot of this is centered on the coordination of this work throughout the district K through 12. And then, of course, we have our literacy fellows, which we've been talking about throughout the year with the board already. And this group is focused on prioritizing the recommendations from the consultants and evaluating them, looking at our current program, looking at other programs to see if they may work here based on some of the concerns that were raised in the audit, and then providing professional development for the staff and for the fellowship on concepts within the science of reading. And so some of the ways that we've been doing this is we've been interacting with vendors, we've been analyzing data, we've been having experts come in and meet with the fellowship team, we've been running PD for our staff, and then we've reached out to districts that are like ours to see what they're thinking about in terms of reading instruction. And so the board has seen this before in terms of our progress. This is the calendar that we're following because this group, which is a little different than the other 2, it actually has like a preset pathway forward, because at the end of this year, we need to come to the Board of Education with a recommendation based on this shared experience that we're having together. And so based on the collective work of all 3 groups, in addition to moving through the audit process and the steps that are associated with the science of reading, where you can see where we are, where right now we're looking at different units that we're thinking about replacing. We actually have like an aggregate of collective focus areas for all 3 groups that we are working on towards in the second half of the year. So I just want to go through those areas, kind of numbered them out. So the first thing that we're thinking about, and remember we have subgroups working on this, is that we're thinking about, based on our conversations with different private schools, looking at leveraging maybe an expert that could help fund some of the capital projects that we are looking to through outside resources. So that's the first thing that we're considering. The second thing that we are talking about is creating a TSP program for the middle schools to be housed at Bell next year, much like the program that we have at Greeley, but also expanding it a little bit based on what middle level learners need. The third thing that we are talking about is creating a policy for the Board of Education Policy Committee to consider, where the district would potentially tuition in high school students to help support some of the extracurricular program here at Greeley. The other school districts do it. We have not traditionally done that, but that is one of the things that we're talking about, potentially presenting a model policy for you to consider. The fourth is expanding our understanding of the IB program in grades K to 10 to see if we want to expand this beyond the life school. The fifth is developing a program for new students, as this has been identified as a real need for us to help support kids who don't begin here in kindergarten that come into the district as new. The sixth is developing a K-4 world language program to be implemented in September of next year. And if you remember in the budget presentation, we signaled to you that we are planning for this and adding positions to the budget to support it. The seventh recommendation is that we create an RFP for a company to do a sustainability and energy performance contract for us in the district. We're on cycle for that to happen again. We have looked at solar in the past, right before the pandemic. At the time, it didn't make sense for us because of the way that the solar project was packaged, because we had to use a lot of our land to be able to offset the cost of the solar project. But we think that technology has evolved, so it might make sense at this point to revisit this as a potential option. The eighth recommendation is that we are receiving feedback from the faculty at the middle level about ruler and needing some more support implementing that program. And so we're looking to provide professional development for that during the superintendent conference day. The ninth recommendation is that we analyze the feedback we received from Horace Greeley High School, and we start to develop a plan over the course of next year to address it. And a lot of that centered on opportunities within their schedule to take electives that they don't feel like they have space for, and a way to help alleviate some of the workload pressure based on logistics of their courses and what they're required to do outside of school. The 10th is to continue our transportation task force to explore the electric busing issue. The 11th is start to merge the student belonging work with the curriculum, because now we have two subgroups working on this. We have one in the strategic plan and we have the DET, so we have to figure out how to merge that together so we don't have two groups working on the same thing. The 12th recommendation is to increase the community's understanding of the reading and writing program. That recommendation came from the board. And so we have recorded different moments in our curriculum, K through 4, and we're working on contracting with a videographer to pull that all together to push out that information to our families right after February break. The 13th recommendation is we still need to be on track to present to you our fellowship recommendations to the board at the end of the year. So making sure we keep pace and keep up with that calendar is very important. The 14th recommendation is there's a lot of recommendations. There's a lot of work. We have 3 groups working on
Keep
this.
waiting for kind of a partridge in a pear tree moment here. Keep going.
The 14th recommendation is we have, because the middle school is like a standalone. We have a lot of data from the middle school now. We've met with our kids, we've met with our faculty, we've met with our parents. There is some real suggestions on how to make that schedule work a little bit better for kids. That's going to take us some time to figure out, but we need to develop a plan around that. So we're still in that process. The 15th recommendation is to oh shoot. Okay, we're gonna fix it. We'll fix that before we go live with this on the website. So the 15th is to we're gonna need a scheduling consultant here based on what I think we're gonna need to do. So we got that the person who normally works with us, it takes a while to book them out. So that's some of what we're thinking. The 16th recommendation is to create a mechanism so individuals can donate directly to the district. So there's not a third party donation process to make it easier for people who would like to support the district on various initiatives. And that really ties to our first recommendation, which is to try to get someone who has a lot of experience doing this, maybe in the private sector, who could help us with this. The 17th recommendation is to explore offering 3 middle school continuing ed courses here at Greeley in the fall that parents could sign their kids up for. They would pay for it, and then we would house them in this building. The 18th recommendation is we continue to reduce the fund balance allocated to offset the budget. And so Josh is going to be talking about that when he presents his portion of the budget to the board. And then the last recommendation, the 19th, is looking at designing a middle level extracurricular and support program to be housed at Greeley after school, which would mean we would, not for all, maybe for some nuanced programming here, we would have kids bused from both buildings here, and we would offer it for our middle school students, and then try to create some kind of, we're talking about creating a tutoring program for students with our high school students, supporting middle school students, but we have to get everybody up here to do that. And so we're starting to talk about ways to do that. And so some of these things we may be able to do before the end of the school year, but others of them, our target would be planning for September, or beginning the plans to implement, not in 2025, but in 2026. So these are all the things we're talking about, or have been talking about in the spring, like moving into the spring. And so that is, before we get into, because I did want to revisit the Princeton plan presentation that we saw previously. I did want to open it up to questions or discussions based on some of what we're thinking about in terms of our plans moving forward.
Christine, can you
Yeah.
just clarify what TSP is for people who are?
Yes.
There were a few acronyms I noted,
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
Jamie, go ahead.
TSP is a temporary support program, and they have it in the high school currently, and it is run by, there's always present in TSP is a school psychologist, a special ed teacher, and a teaching assistant. And kids access the program for lots of different reasons. So a student might go to TSP when they are returning to school after a long illness, and they need to get some work done in order to get caught up to return to classes. So that's one use of it. Another is it's a safe space, and there is always a school psychologist there to offer some mental health support. So a student could be recommended by their counselor to access TSP, and they could use it between classes, during freeze, or sometimes during a class if they really need the support during that time.
So the reason, oh, sorry, Jamie.
Go ahead.
The reason we're starting at Bell is because in the past we've had to use the high school program to support Bell students primarily. So we figured we'd start at Bell, and then we would expand it to Seven Bridges after we pilot it. But we'd also have our Seven Bridges students have the opportunity to have access to it, and then we would work towards transporting students there, and as a place for them to be able to have a step back into, a transitional step back into the school based on whatever they're facing. So we're in the process of planning it.
So we have had middle schools come here to utilize the program here. It seems that the middle schools, that was always tricky to have our middle school kids in the high school, and our middle school students are different. So it'll be structured similarly, but not completely the same.
Thanks.
I think Hillary had one.
I didn't understand what you meant by continuing education
Yes.
in middle school.
Great. So we have continuing education courses for high school students. They're driver's ed and SAT courses. And so we're going to look at maybe offering different classes that parents can sign their kids up for to pay a fee. Maybe there's an art class, maybe it's ceramics, maybe there's a class in the weight room. So that would be part of our program to see if it's something that would be viable, that parents would be interested in having their kids participate in, that would generate revenue for the district, but also be an additional opportunity for students to be able to engage in an extracurricular activity that perhaps maybe parents would contract with outside of the school to support them.
So that's different, because you also mentioned extracurriculars and potentially bringing kids here after school for support. So it's differentiating between outside things that we would contract with.
Right,
for
so
after school.
let me
Like an
give you
ASC?
3 different examples of how this could potentially work. You could have a group of kids coming from both schools to get tutoring help from high school students. You could have a pocket of kids coming from both schools to be in a PTA activity like Quiz Bowl, right? Then you could have a pocket of kids coming from both schools whose parents have paid for them to take an art class. Like that's how we're kind of visualizing it happening.
But the idea is that it would be centered here.
Yes, so both schools would feed into here, the building's bigger. And if there's a middle school teacher or a high school, or even an elementary, they would come here to teach the class. We have more supervision here, and it wouldn't put an undue burden on one population of middle school students versus the other, because we're central. And then they could take the late bus home here. We don't have high traveling, but we don't have a lot of kids take that late bus home, so it would be another way of using it.
Matt?
I have a few. I guess the first question I have is for you or Adam. The literacy fellowship's obviously not making a recommendation until the end of the year, so how do we balance that with the budget that we have to adopt prior to that? Because obviously, like you said, we already made an accommodation for the world language that's baked in there, so how do we think about that?
Adam, go ahead.
So I'll be presenting my budget in the upcoming months, but we have a pretty significant textbook line, and quite a few of the curriculum materials that we subscribe to, you can subscribe to them for 1, 3, or 5 years. And so what ends up happening is we've built up that textbook line knowing that we've been, this is like not new to us in terms of potentially making a big purchase for a literacy program, and they're not cheap. And so we have used that money to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room with regard to some of those other programs, like TCI, for example. If you buy a 3-year subscription, it's a little bit better than buying a 1-year subscription. If you buy a 5-year subscription, they give you a better deal. So if we decide to make a larger purchase for literacy, then we would do a smaller purchase for some of those other things. If we decide not to, then we have that money to buy a longer subscription to one of those other programs that we know we're going to stick with, like math, for example, or TCI and social studies, which gives us a little bit of wiggle room with literacy. Does that make sense? So we can kind of pay for some future years of curriculum to open up the opportunity if we want to make the bigger purchase the following year.
Got it. But what happens if something, like we make a determination at the end of that stretch in June that we found something that we really want to invest in? That cannot happen until the following year, correct?
Yeah, so the plan based on the timeline that we've been discussing so far has been that we would choose a few programs to pilot next year. So we weren't
So not
thinking
making
full
an investment
implementation.
until
We were going to
next
try it with some faculty members, potentially ones that are on our fellowship, maybe some others, and pilot it. There are some other steps that we would do before that. We would typically, right now we're looking at the programs, the different vendors, 10 different vendors have sent us programs. We would do things like reference checks with similar school districts. We would do some site visits, bring teams of teachers to see the programs in action, interview teachers that are implementing them, have vendors actually come in. They'll come in and do presentations for us so we can ask some questions
So
about what we've seen.
Full implementation would be September 26th.
That's right.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I just pick
Go.
it back up? Wait, so you are going to pilot a bunch of different programs?
Right now, we've gone through half of them, and we haven't found any that we would even feel comfortable piloting. So I think we'll have a better idea of where we are after our next meeting when we go through the next 5.
But the plan is to pilot a bunch of different literacy programs throughout the district.
I think the plan is going to be to see if we can identify any that would make sense to even consider piloting. I think we're not.
And as of right now, we're 0 for 5.
That's correct. We have one potential supplement to the units of study that we're considering. The issue that we're having, and we just had a session with Gravity Goldberg on like reading, the science of reading, and the shift in curriculum that has been that we've been talking so much about, and the concerns that we have about selecting an approach that doesn't really align with what our kids need based on who our kids are. And so I think what we're experiencing, and Andrew, Adam, and I are all on the fellowship with the team, is that there's a lot of hesitancy to move away from a lot of the good work that's happening in the classroom based on what else is out there. But we're keeping an open mind. We have another meeting. We're going to go through another 5 programs, but there hasn't been anything that the committee has even remotely embraced. So it is possible that we could have 1 or 2 programs that we really take a look at to pilot, but it is also possible that the committee doesn't recommend that. So I think we just need to stay open to the process, which is very much in line with what we just experienced before we came here today.
All right.
I think Matt might have more.
No, if you want to keep going on this, then I have two different questions.
Okay.
Go.
Just, I know I briefly spoke with Adam, just, I think it was after, I think it was, I'm not sure which meeting it was, but I asked, Matt and I had an opportunity to walk through when you guys were looking at the different programs, and I know you have 5 more on deck to review, but I can't ignore the fact that, you know, when I walked through, the sense of, I'm not sure if, you know, I asked if the people in there, like if everybody knew what they were reviewing. And the answer is going to be obviously no, and we all know the answer because it's teachers from different grade levels and different fields, but I just wonder, what about the teachers that are actually teaching this right now in the classrooms, and they've been teaching it day in, day out for many, many years, for some decades? Like, how do they find a way to voice their thoughts in sharing what they know and have observed? It's not even a matter of like what they like, right? Because sometimes when we look at a program, if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you're just going to comment on what you see superficially on the outside. You might say, oh, I like this because this has a lot of workbook pages and I'm used to workbook pages, or I don't like it because workbooks are bad, right? So depending on where you come from and who you are in your teaching career, I think it's your review of a particular program is going to be skewed one way or another, and there will be biases. And you know, you talk to your colleagues in different districts, and one person says great things about something, and then another person says, oh, I didn't love it, right? So how do we make sure that it's not like just a personal, I love these attributes about it, but I don't like this?
Do you want
Right?
to, oh, sorry, Kelly. Do you want to share about the rubric that we're using
Yes.
to evaluate the programs?
Sure. So in June of last year, June of this year, this last June, New York State released the rubric that they're asking us to use to evaluate. All school districts will have to evaluate their literacy program. So that's the rubric that we're using. And we've layered on to that rubric our philosophy that we developed as a recommendation. So we have an additional component of the rubric, which is to what extent does it align with our philosophy of literacy. So we actually started with some professional development of that group by using the rubric to apply it to our current program, which, you know, many people in the room knew pretty deeply and have been teaching it for years. So that's how we learned how to use the rubric and apply it to an actual program. There's 5 different sections of the rubric, and we created 5 different groups with 5 people in each of those groups. And then what we did, so we had some inter-rater reliability that looked narrowly and deeply at that one component of the rubric, and then we jigsawed them once they scored that, you know, component, we jigsawed them out into the scoring group. So we had the inter-rater reliability built in within the group. We jigsawed them out, and then they looked at, in the next session, they looked at one of the programs, with the idea being that they were trained as a group to look in a similar way across the different programs. Now, is there some variability? There will be some variability. At this stage of the evaluation, we're really just looking for, like, is this a program that we want to know more about, or is this a program that we feel like we can just put on the shelf and say this just doesn't fit? In some cases, there was a real, like, kind of visceral reaction to some of the pieces that kids would be reading. You know, that it just didn't align with our belief system around what kids should be reading for a variety of reasons, and it was just something that we wouldn't even consider. And I think if we were to share them with you, you'd probably agree with that assessment. So there were some that we just kind of said, this really isn't a good fit. There was one program we asked at the end if the groups would just give it, like, out of 5 stars, what would you give it, just so we could do a quick debrief as a group. And the highest number was 3 stars out of 5, and we actually kept the 3 stars out of 5, but that one, even that one didn't get a kind of glowing review. So that was a little bit about the process and how we created some inter-rater reliability. This group is not going to pick the programs. They're going to pick some programs that we want to more deeply look at, and there will be opportunities for other teachers to, you know, our classroom teachers, more classroom teachers, to be able to weigh in on the decision, certainly.
I thought it was really interesting because we had the opportunity to
to learn as a board this afternoon about a lot of the science of reading work and hear from Gravity. And, you know, not having a background in literacy, I found her presentation really, really interesting and also eye-opening in terms of the idea that as obviously we're looking into this and we're looking into what programs to potentially pilot and look into, that even the experts seem sort of unhappy with the idea of taking one program and running with it. And when she said that there are programs where like the kids aren't reading full texts ever, like that was really discouraging to me, and that these are highly regarded programs, but that there's no, like, I think that the process that we're going through and the way we're analyzing this and the way we're also making sure that our kids who are successful learners are continuing to be challenged through this whole process is really important, because that was something that really struck me this afternoon, was the idea that so many of these programs are actually entering in a place where we may be doing our kids a disservice by switching, which is exactly what we don't want to do. We want to make sure that if we're making a change, we're making a change that is helping our kids and pushing all of our kids in the right direction. And so I'm very appreciative in light of everything you're presenting to us tonight, that we also really got to hear that presentation from her this afternoon, because I found it very, very helpful. And also that, I don't know, it really gave me pause as someone who's gonna like have to listen to these recommendations coming out of this committee and coming out of this work, that we really want to make sure, and I thought it was also important to the people doing this work that the teachers have proven time and again to be the biggest variable in the success. So I think it's, you know, to Kaylee's point of hearing from the teachers who are doing the work in the classroom, that's really, really important. And probably it turns out much more important than whatever decision we reach. And I think, you know, as parents, we're always sort of keenly aware of that. But, and I'm hopeful we can, as you continue with the committee to do this work and come through this, I also hope that we can share a lot of that sort of research and stuff that she presented with the community, because it was certainly very eye-opening for me and really informative. And I'm hopeful that we can also share some of that out, because I think it supports everything that you're telling us this evening, and it was great.
Thank you.
I think, Matt, you may have more. Do you want to ask off of literacy?
No, yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
done with literacy for now.
Great.
No more reading from you. Okay.
Right. Well, I might have misread this one, so this is. It said, I think it was number 13, middle school plan. Like, it's just, the plan is just like scheduling based, or is
All right,
that-
so I'm trying to be as vague as possible, because this is number 14. Because we're getting a lot of feedback in from different places about how to improve the middle school. So you see some of that reflected in some of these recommendations. Like, can we create a process to combine opportunities for kids at Horace Greeley High School to expand or amplify some of our resources, right? But there's a lot of feedback in around replicating like the club schedule at Greeley at the middle level, and having a space to address pullouts for lessons, students that need AIS, students that want like an enrichment opportunity beyond like the participating in the extracurricular program. So we have to take that and then figure out how are we going to address some of those needs and opportunities that we heard, but we're not ready to say, okay, this is the plan. We're going to present a plan for the middle school and the high school in June, after we take time to like really process out the feedback that we received.
So is that like with number 9, is that similar? You said you got feedback and you're developing a plan.
Yes, number 9, we heard from kids. Number 9, we heard from students, the desire to take courses outside of the ones that they felt like they needed to. So
Like
how
more
can
electives?
like, I can't fit art, I can't fit music, I
Right.
can't fit this, that, or other thing, because I need to take these APs. So is there a way to leverage the schedule to open it up a little bit so kids can take courses for their own enrichment that doesn't have the weight of the AP on it, but also that they don't feel like they're losing something as they apply for college? It's very complicated, but those are the discussions that we're having. We got to figure that out and then develop a plan and share it with you. And then we have to work on that plan before implementation.
That's also, the part of that is, I hope, is when students are in orchestra or taking Latin or honors math, they're usually fixed into a schedule for the 4 years of their high school life. So if you're an honors math student and you happen to be in orchestra or band and or Latin particularly, you are fixed and you have very little wiggle room, not only to take an elective, but to do anything else. So there has to be
Yes.
a way.
Yes, that's what
Yes,
we're, yes,
okay.
yes, we agree. That's what you know what's great about that? That's what the kids were asking for, like in our unofficial lunch bunch conversations. And but like that's what the faculty's asking for. They're asking for more opportunities for kids to be in elective
So, like,
courses.
leaning into the
So we're
flex
we got to
part of
figure
what
that
we're
out,
doing.
and so it's going to take us some time, but that's what we're talking about.
The parents are asking for it too,
That's what
so
the
you could
parents
add,
are
yes.
asking
And
for. I think that, I mean, these are all good conversations for us to have, right? And listen, these are all, I think creating the 3 teams with the combination of our staff, like replicating the DET in reading and strategic plan, has helped generate some ideas that I think are really powerful, but we have to follow the process to, like, these are the ideas right now, but we have to take the time to figure out how to actually make it happen. So it's done well.
Yeah, my last one is just a point of clarification. In the 19 bullets here, we don't have, and I know people were excited about it, so I just want you to clarify, the partnership with Northwell Health is still on track, so I feel like people would be really, I don't want to get upset by not seeing it here, that's still in the
Yes,
pipeline.
that's not in the, so thank you for clarifying that. That's not in the bullets because that's not something we need to do because it's in the budget.
Right.
Everything, that we don't have to plan for that.
I know that, but like, I
But
just
thank you,
wanted to
Matt,
clarify
for
that.
mentioning that. That is true. We do
I
have
was
that in
trying
the
to come up
budget.
with the 20th one myself.
I should-
Just one nice even number. So.
I hope what you see here is like a lot of innovative thinking to try to address like the strategic plan, but also to kind of think outside the box to kind of recreate some of what we're doing here.
Did you have more, Kelly?
So,
Did you want to?
Oh, I didn't go yet.
go
I
ahead,
didn't-
Kelly.
I didn't
You
go
added
yet.
on, but I didn't
Yes.
know if you
Yeah,
had
I was
on.
adding on. Oh, is it now
Yes,
my
yes.
turn? My turn? Okay.
I yield.
So I had on slide, now I don't know which slide it went. When you were talking about having world languages for K to 4, and then above that, what slide was that? Above
That's-
that was the middle school experience.
So
I thought
we're
I wrote
on, so on number 6, we have developed K-4 World Language Program. So do you,
Yes, but there was a different slide. In any case,
yes, go ahead.
the middle school experience, does that include the Mandarin program? I know you talked about world languages in K to 4 and launching that possibly, but we are still missing, and I cannot emphasize enough that Mandarin is the only world language that is at the high school, but is not at the middle school level, and it is one of the hardest languages to learn, and I'm not sure why we are not starting that earlier. So that to me is more urgent than piloting a new language, whether it might be Spanish or Mandarin, whatever it may be. And I know there is, it's hard to find teachers, but I don't want that to be, we can't do it. I need us to really commit to that because there's no reason to start Mandarin in 9th grade. And now we've added an AP course to that, which is amazing, and I think parents are appreciative and kids are accessing that, but we have to get them ready. It is one of the most used languages in the world, aside from the Romance language, Spanish. But so I wanted to know if that was part of that, the middle school experience.
Yeah, so that hasn't been part of the discussion. It certainly could be part of the discussion. It's the challenges you mentioned. One of them is level of student interest and the extent to which we would have students sign up. The second part of that is the staffing that goes with it. We would need a teacher in each of the buildings. So you're talking about potentially 2 teachers that are being added. We were moving in the direction to recommend 2 teachers for the FLES program. That was, recommendation from the task force that was part of that strategic planning committee. FLES stands for foreign language in the elementary school, even though we typically use world language now, that acronym still sticks. The Mandarin program act really is a small number of students, and we do find students kind of dropping out of that program as it moves along, and so the upper levels of Chinese have, very few students in them, and so to sustain the faculty even at the high school is challenging, with the 2 middle schools feeding into the high school. The impact of that may be different if we had a middle school program. We may
Right,
increase
so-
the numbers,
right.
But that would be something that, we would have to have further discussions on. We haven't as part of the strategic planning committee. It hasn't been
Oh,
part
I'm
of that.
surprised that we have not, because I've been talking about this for a very long time. And I think what you said at the end, Adam, is how I would feel. The reason that we have a lower number in terms of Mandarin learners at the high school level might have to do with the fact that it's not offered earlier. It's the only language that's not offered. And it's not like we're taking a poll as to would you take Mandarin or not. That's not how we do things here. I'm just saying that if we're going to offer it at the high school level, we must offer it at the middle level. It's just, I would say that that's more urgent than starting another language program K-4. I mean, you can do it simultaneously, obviously.
So in the strategic plan, we have it broken down by building. And in the middle school and in the high school, we have it for world language, foreign language, redesigned based on how we implement the elementary school model. So that is part of the process. It's just a 5-year plan, so we're starting with implementing an elementary school program. Now, based on what that program looks like, it'll influence what 5th grade looks like, what 6th grade looks like, and then what 7th grade looks like, because that's when the certification area starts, like 7 through 12. So that is part of the collective strategic plan that just hasn't been the focus of the first semester of our work. So we don't have a plan at this point to share about how we would be redesigning the middle school, because that's not where we started. We started with the elementary level to add those positions. But that is a part of the larger strategic plan. It's not just going to be what the middle school looks like. It's going to be what the high school looks like based on us starting out at the elementary level, world language moving forward.
Thank you. But I just want to, again, on the record, just re-emphasize how important that is. Personally, and I think to a lot of people in this community, in terms of world language education and how we can strengthen it by providing those opportunities at the middle level.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
I have a couple, but I
Okay.
want to make sure Kaylee was done.
I'm done for now.
Okay. One's a quick one, because I'm not sure we talked about IB all that much publicly, so I wasn't, have we done, I couldn't remember if we've done a presentation that explained the International Baccalaureate
Right, so.
enough for
I'm gonna-
people to, yeah, so just
So,
make sure people get that.
all right, so, thank you, Ryan. So we've had multiple presentations at the high school for
Right.
parents because the Life School is piloting IB
Right.
next academic year. What we've been talking about in our subgroup is exploring whether or not that would make sense to expand to the middle school and elementary school and grades 9 and 10, because they have a bend that might work very nicely here and align with our curriculum. And so the Board of Education actually had a work session with a representative from the IB program and our faculty, who shared with the board their experiences as either IB schools and faculty members of those schools, or what IB is going to look like here in the district next year. So now I'm going to transition over to Andrew, because he is leading the subgroup on IP with Dr. Sandra Seppi, the high school principal, just to kind of share just some concepts about what IB is, with the understanding that if we were to move in this direction, or even explore it further, there would be opportunities for parents to come in and learn about it as a part of our process. So go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. So IB has 4 different programs that they offer, and the one that most people are familiar with is the diploma program, where students take high-level courses, college-level courses in 11th and 12th grade, and they have exams at the end that they would take to get an IB diploma. Right now, we're not looking at that one. The Life School is adopting the career program, which is the newest of their programs, I believe, also for 11th and 12th grade students. And what we're exploring, 2 other programs that they have: a primary years program that takes K through 5th grade, and a middle years program that goes from 6th to 10th grade. And those are more frameworks that focus on interdisciplinary work, student-driven inquiry, being global citizens, and there's 6 different themes that guide, let's say, the primary years program that you would wrap your current curriculum around, and you'd have to teach interdisciplinary lessons around those. At the middle years program, it has the subject areas that are very much aligned with our subject areas, but they also rope in these 3 themes. I could tell you, it's like who we are. This is for the middle years, the primary years program: who we are, where we are in place and time, how we express ourselves, how the world works, how we organize ourselves, and sharing the planet. And you'd rope in our current curriculum within those. And then in the middle years program, there's an extended self-directed study program that kids do, where they take on a topic that they're very interested in learning, and they're guided through that. And there's also a requirement for more interdisciplinary work. So it sounds like something that would really work well with our current system, adding on layers of meaning and global responsibility and interconnectedness, and a framework that pushes us to do more interdisciplinary work, more hands-on work, working on real-world problems. And there's a piece around advocacy, how locally and and globally that students can leverage their learning to make differences and take in the world and take advantage of opportunities that it presents. So we're in a process right now of going to some conferences, plan to visit some schools. We're talking about potentially doing some training to gain knowledge, to help share that with faculty in the schools to determine if this is a good place for us to go. Timeline for that is really more than a year before we'd have to decide if we were going to enter into a candidacy phase, which would then take at least another year to then work on the curriculum and the adjustments that would need to be made to adopt an IB program. So we're really talking in this learning and information gathering phase to make a decision would be next April 1st. So that's where the program is now.
I appreciate that, Andrew. I want to make sure the community heard that paragraph where you were talking about the affordances, like the interdisciplinary part, the citizen part, all those things. So that's why I think the district's curious to learn more and see where it can go. So thank you for that.
Exactly. Yep.
The other one that I wanted to make sure we got out there too is Christine, to talk a little bit about, and maybe Josh too, for people to understand, why would we seek to raise money outside of the traditional tax base and budget? Like, what are we targeting when we're doing that? People not following the strategic plan don't know that revenue thing is in there, and why is it there?
Yeah, so I'll share that we have done some really great projects here at Greeley through support from partners who have contributed a significant amount of resources. So it's the way that we were able to support the Sustainability Research Center. It's the way we supported the redesign of the Greeley gym. So are there opportunities that we could tap into to fund some projects that we've been working on collectively with CSF that we wouldn't want to put forward in the budget, but we would like to move forward as a district to enhance the opportunities that we have throughout our schools? So some of the things that we've talked about in the past publicly that we've had designed by our architect, but we would seek funding for would be outdoor instructional spaces at the elementary school, or the well, which would be a facility here that would kind of replicate the stock market at Greeley. And these are spaces that we've seen in other schools. They're spaces that we've seen on college campuses. And so how can we potentially secure funding for these innovative spaces without placing the burden on the taxpayer? And so Josh and I and our subgroup had the opportunity to meet with a private school that does this work. And then Adam and I also had the opportunity to go to a private school to hear from them how they do this work. And in each of those different schools, they have an office that supports this, but then they have specialists that do targeted capital projects. And so what we're thinking is there a way for us to hire one of these specialists around some projects that we know that we have in the queue to try to target potentially donors to help support the projects here in the district. So it's out of the box thinking for sure for a public school, but we'd like to take a stab at trying to put something together for the board's consideration to potentially put out there to see what kind of responses we get. It doesn't commit us to anything for sure, but it gives us a different opportunity to potentially leverage. So that's the work of our committee. The other thing that we are thinking about, you didn't ask it, but I'm going to say it, is that we have a number of people each year that ask us if we can enroll kids in the district who don't live here. Other school districts have tuition opportunities for non-residents, and so that we want to do some analysis of that and then present to the policy committee something for their consideration.
Right.
We don't have to do it, but I think we should explore these different opportunities, and they are outlined in this. That is outlined actually in the strategic plan as something that we would
So this is number
seriously
3.
look at.
Non-resident is the key word that's not on number 3, but that's who we're talking about when we're saying tuitioning students.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these are things in the plan that we don't have to do, but we committed to potentially exploring. So we're getting ready to do that now.
All right, that's it from me. Anybody have any forward? All right, I think we're
Okay. All right. So now we're going to move into the Princeton plan. Just revisit some of the presentation. I'm actually going to lean into Josh, who's going to talk more about this. So if you could just flip to the next one. So the recommendations, of course, were to keep the middle schools as they currently are structured and not to redistrict the elementary schools to balance the enrollment because the projections indicated that things eventually would just stabilize. And so we talked about this very briefly at the strategic planning committee. There wasn't any real interest in like going down the road of exploring whether or not we should not follow the recommendations, at least at this time, mainly because of I think the unknowns around transportation. And whether it's so to redirect all of our energy towards a model that was so prohibitive based on the potential issues associated with transportation wasn't something that there was a lot of interest around. But again, we didn't spend too much time really diving into this because his recommendations were so clear. And I think that since even this time, the unknowns around the electric busing and what could potentially be the outcome of the study down by the sawmill could influence this in a different way, maybe a few years from now, where this could potentially make sense based on some changes in the world that we can't anticipate at this time. The other thing I wanted Josh to do was just to share a slide on the enrollment projections, because I think we went over this very quickly, just to show how that will be balanced out. And then I would like Adam just to talk a little bit about, after Josh talks about enrollment and transportation more specifically, a little bit about just some transition considerations, because he did put that in some of his concerns. And I do think that it makes sense just revisiting that too.
Maybe before Josh starts, do you mind us explaining about the sawmill piece? Because not everyone saw that story
Sure.
maybe this week.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So the state has a grant, and working with the MTA, they've allocated $2.6 million to do a study of the intersection at the sawmill and Roaring Brook Road, both the train tracks and the sawmill, to make some determinations and recommendations and put drawings together for a redesign that would make the intersection safer, which could include a tunnel, it could include a bridge, it could include a train track, it could include, they're all unknowns, but there's a pretty significant dollar amount that's been allocated to do that study.
Wait, that's just for study? I thought they were giving $2.6 million to fix it. They're just starting to
It's a
study it.
study.
Yeah.
Study.
Well, it's a problem. Like, wasn't that what they
Well,
realized?
right. And I believe the study is to do designs and come up with drawings and come up with solutions and to put the plan together.
This is not imminent.
No, and it's the major, I would say that of
Right. No,
the
it's
major
right,
barriers
right,
in
no.
the potential reorganization, that was it. It's the,
That's
it's the
what
sawmill.
I saw that. I thought we could bridge in 2 years. No?
No, I think it might cost.
Or,
more.
yeah.
Gonna add like 4 zeros to it, so.
But we never know. So go
Right,
ahead,
never.
Josh.
So as part of the study, we collected a significant amount of data about enrollment in the district, including both housing sales, live births, everything. And one of the things that I think was looked over is that by 2930, looking at our cohort data, you could see that Seven Bridges and Bell's populations are going to start to even out with only a 32 student difference by 2930. So as the large gap that is there this year, right, which is 88 students, is going to start to narrow. We know this information now because these students are basically in our school district. In kindergarten at this moment, we know what their district for, we know what schools they're going to go to. So part of the study was that. So I want to make sure that everybody sees that the disparity of the numbers of students at the schools is going to start to even out a little bit over the next 5 years.
Now, that doesn't mean they couldn't build a housing complex and this
Right.
whole thing could go sideways, but right now, this is the information that we have, so we should make decisions on what we know. Okay? I just
So
want to put that out
to
there.
that point of making decisions with what we know, I guess my question, and you may be able to answer this, you may not, it's a piece of information I'd like to see if we could get at some point, is I felt like he was very dismissive of my idea that people would raise children in townhouses, which has not been, I think, the experience in Chappaqua. And I'm kind of wondering, like, is there a way, whether, we get that information this year or we just sort of monitor it? Like, I feel like that was the one thing that I found very sort of, I guess, off-putting on some level, is that I felt like he was just very dismissive of the idea when I asked, they're building a lot of multifamily housing that is, or single family attached housing that is zoned for one school, one elementary and one middle. That's not all inhabited yet, right? Like, how will that impact things? And he was like, oh, nobody's gonna raise kids there, which I think, based on housing patterns in our district, is just, it doesn't seem true to me. Do you have any insight into whether?
So the insight we have is the students that are enrolled in our school district, which is 14 students that live there. And I think it's about half inhabited right now. So that's the data we currently have. I can begin to collect that data, and until people move in, I don't know if we're going to exactly have that. We could look at other similar size housing developments and get some information about that, and see what those trends look like as well. And I could report back.
Thank you. That's really my question. Like, we're not going to know, and we're not going to know, our couples who move in who don't have kids going to have kids. Like, we're not going to knock on their door and ask them, right? Like, but I think that if we look at similar developments in the community, my guess, and maybe I'm completely wrong, is that his assumptions may not be true.
Well, we'll know pretty soon, because they'll be, the housing will be completed, and then we'll work with the developer to have a better understanding of who has moved into those residents. I mean, they've been pretty forthright
Yeah,
in terms of
they've been
supporting what
pretty
we've needed.
forthcoming, and families that have been going into contract have pretty much immediately been contacting us, whether it's a pre-K student or a K student, to enroll there, to begin that process. So everybody has been very open and forthcoming.
I'm more concerned about, and again, not just if there's a lot of development downtown, what the outcome of that would be on the district. But those are things that haven't happened. So I think we should just
And within
consider.
this time horizon, we're not going to make a dramatic impact, doesn't seem to me.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think this is what we know. And so basing the decisions on what we know right now at this time, like, we don't have the sawmill redesign. We don't have a redesign. We don't have a projected date. We don't know about electric busing. Something may change based on, the landscape is changing. So based on what we know, keeping things the way that we are and potentially focusing on the other things that I shared might be our best consideration. But I do think Adam, if you could move the slide, just we wanted to just tease out the transportation issues just a little bit again, just to be clear about it. So go ahead, Josh.
So we sent over all of our bus routing to Ross, and he looked and analyzed at all of our current bus routes and then started to build routes with the split schools. And that's where he started to look at it and saw that these sample bus routes, some of them are as long as 11 miles and will take 44 minutes in time of a student on a bus. So Adam, if you could go to the next slide, there's an image of what currently some of those routes need to look like to get to Bell. And some of these are new housing since Seven Bridges was built. But you could see the orange line is some housing from all the way up there. It has to, the route the bus needs to take to get to Bell School. And the same is true with, and that's the 44-minute route to get to school with all of the lights on 117, getting through all the way across into town. And then the green is the same thing to get over for there from the bridge to Bell School. So there was a time factor and that one took about 20 minutes, the green line, and 32 minutes without stopping to get to the school. So there was a big time factor first there. There was also a tiering factor. So if you have now 4 levels of schools and getting students into those locations, there would be a significant number of additional buses that would need to be purchased, or you would need to have 4 tiers. So right now, our middle school, high school are a little bit staggered, and then we have our elementary school. We would have to add a 3rd or a 4th tier of busing and changing the start times of our school day in order to accommodate that beginning of school day and end of school day. So there were a myriad of transportation issues that would cost a significant amount of money in order to complete the plan of having a 5-6 school and a 7-8 school.
And because there was the discussion around transition time, I just asked Adam just to share some considerations, because this is something that the board has asked the district to really work on since I began here. And so we're at a place where we feel like we've addressed a lot of the issues that we were seeing in 5th grade based on some adjustments that we've made. But I do think it's important for us to just revisit this, because we would have to really talk about this if we were to switch the model up and have a 5, 6, and 7, 8 building, because we'd be adding a transition right in the middle for 6th and 7th grade. So go ahead, Adam.
Right, so on the left side, I pulled some research. I actually hadn't read a lot about research of transitions K through 8, and what the research said is kind of summarized there on the left side. And in this case, I think our intuition and kind of individual experiences likely align with what the research is saying. Transitions are particularly hard for kids before 8th grade. The transition from 8th to 9th has a little different research attached, which I was surprised to read. But the transitions that you see in school districts right now, we've just got that one transition to middle school. If we added a transition, the things on the left are things that we would certainly want to consider. One thing is that you do see a temporary drop in academic performance, especially around science and math. And so you're adding that, additional kind of drop in the middle between 6th and 7th potentially. You see that increase in that adjustment period, compounding academic and social challenges. It can disrupt teacher-student relationships, because the teachers and students are really together for 2 years, and then they change and they have a whole new crop for accrue for the next 2 years. And then you see the other kind of social emotional components: lowered self-esteem, increased behavioral issues during adjustment periods, et cetera. So that's what the research says on the left. On the right side, these are small, I know, but the board has seen these over the years. These are our proficiency scores over time. The top one I pulled from actually 2019. So it has 2016 through 2019 data. And you can see all the way back 2016, 5th grade was our lowest. This is proficiency data. So these are kids that are scoring 3s or 4s on the ELA exam. I just pulled the ELA, and you can see where, back in 2016, 60% proficient, 69, 72, 65. And that challenge persists all the way through that bottom graph. You're seeing numbers like 78, and then 2022 we had 65% proficient, which was the lowest out of all of the 4 years for the grades that are shown. And then we really committed a lot of resources to that. We restructured the program. We created 2-person teams. We double up the blocks so that we have English and social studies together, math and science together with the same teacher. We changed out the furniture in the classrooms. We provided professional development, rewrote some curriculum over the summer. We spent several summers on it. And we finally got to a point where we're in like a really good place in 5th grade. We've got 85% of our students are proficient. And when you look across the grades, for last year, grade 3 was 80%, grade 4, 82, grade 5, 85, grade 6, 86, and 87, then 91. So we're on like it's in the right spot now with all of the things that we put in place. We would have to really do some deep thinking about what would that look like in terms of the resources to be required for the kids, let alone the other components of that. So it's not to say it can't be done. It adds a whole nother like layer of complexity in the middle of middle school that we should consider.
I feel like if the transportation wasn't such a huge barrier, then I think it would make sense for us to come back to you with a plan to address this concern as a part of exploring whether or not we should actually do this. But I think the transportation right now is such a barrier that we would be in a process to get to probably the same place at the end of the process, which would be, at this point in time, it just doesn't make sense to go any further down this road. But of course, we'll do whatever the board would like us to. But this is kind of, I think, at least where I am right now, based on the study and the outcome of. I know that the presentation may not have went the way that everyone would have hoped it would when it was initially shared. But this study was, this was probably one of the most extensive studies we've ever had in the district that was done with such precision that I feel really confident in the work that he had done and the recommendations that he's making. And it just makes sense based on where we are right now, I think, with all these different competing interests about what people are expecting us to do in the future.
So Christine, are you looking for us to have a discussion amongst ourselves, or
Yeah,
what would be helpful?
I think what would be helpful is if you wanted the strategic planning committee to go down this road and really look at this as a potential option. I would like that direction now, because I did not plan on facilitating that within our meetings. I plan on focusing on the things that I shared with you. But if that is something the board still wants us to do, then I need to know, because I gotta kind of think about how to do that in a way that makes sense.
So,
We should just, open it up, see what people think. Yeah.
so you want to just talk about it right now?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I was disappointed with what the study said vis-a-vis transportation, because I was excited about the idea of really looking into the Princeton plan. I think, from notwithstanding what Adam presented about the transitions, I think there were a lot of positives and a lot of reasons that we looked into it again in the first place. I reluctantly agree with your assessment that given the overwhelming logistical problems, it probably doesn't make sense to push our resources in that direction at this point. What I really appreciate, though, is that in what you presented earlier with the 20 things you're looking into, that I feel like the team is still looking at a lot of the whys behind why we were looking at the Princeton plan in the first place. So some of the reasons that we had been looking at was perceived, whether felt by teachers, kids, community members, imbalances in different ways with the between the two middle schools, the idea of the kids being separated for so long. So those are all things that I think are really valid concerns and ones we were seeking to address. So I really appreciate that if this is not a feasible solution for us at this juncture, which it looks like it's not, that you're looking at those other ways of addressing some of that, like giving the kids opportunities to come together here for shared programming or shared, social experiences or what have you at earlier times, because I think those are really legitimate concerns amongst our community, both our faculty community and our kids. So, like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm disappointed. I was excited about the idea of pursuing it, and I know a lot of us were, but I think, like, the logistical, I think there are better ways to try to overcome those concerns that are going to be less expensive and less trying on the kids, because, you know, truthfully, as a parent, like, I don't want my kid on a bus for an hour. So I think that's, I agree with the assessment.
I mean, we can go down the row or not. It's up to you guys.
Okay, well, I'll go next. Oh, God. I feel similar to how Hillary feels. I think that I was really excited to hear what he had to say, because there's a lot of positives to the Princeton model, and we had heard a lot of good things about the potential idea. So it was unfortunate that at this juncture, it sounds like our buses are our biggest constraint to that happening, and with I'm on the electric bus committee, and there's a lot of constraints on that, moving forward, and we have to figure out how much that's gonna cost us with the existing buses that we already have. Electric buses are much more expensive than regular buses, and I think until we figure that out, we can't potentially think of a plan that could double the amount of buses that we need. We can't afford that. But in light of the sawmill study that's happening, that's exciting, and if something comes down the pike, or the parkway, or the sawmill, that it potentially gives us a tunnel, or a bus, or a bridge, then I think we should look at it again when the bus issue is not such a big barrier to entry. Because I think it is a good idea, but I think at this moment in time, it would be not the right use of our resources to go down that road.
I personally believe the Princeton model would really benefit our kids' social, emotional development, as well as academic. But I don't think that it's healthy for a kid to be on a bus for an hour. So it sort of leaves us at a stalemate. I don't know why, when I asked him the question about extending the schools K through 5, that he made like that was the first time I ever asked him, because it wasn't. So he didn't address that, he didn't look into that, and I'm sort of, I guess, disinterested in asking him to do that, because he didn't do it the first time, and I feel like in our conversations, that creates curricular challenges for us and staffing challenges for us that really would sort of necessitate a revamp of our entire model. So that's why I was excited about the Princeton plan. I still think it's in the best interest of the kids, but I don't think that a kid who lives in the Whipple Crossing area going to Seven Bridges makes much functional sense. So unfortunately, I think that's...
Can I add a little bit
Sure.
to what you're saying about, I know that, because we were in a coffee and parents had talked about, can fifth grade remain at the elementary level? And I think when I hear that, and I understand it in a lot of ways, but I think what the unintentional consequence would be that you'd actually be restricting resources for our fifth graders, because they have different opportunities available to them at the middle school because of the spaces and the ability to support students in a very different way. So while I can understand that the parents might feel like fifth grade remaining at the elementary school might be in their students' best interest academically, I think the opportunities that we provide at the middle level for our fifth graders probably outweigh that in a lot of ways. Plus, I would be concerned about the impact of that on the overall space at the elementary level.
Yeah,
And
I think
opportunities
it's-
for K-4
And I think it's
because of
parents
that.
guarding against the unknown. For the majority of the parents, like me, haven't experienced this yet. So the guarding of their little babies, so to speak, going off to this big middle school, but as I think I've learned through the years, we do a really good job of siloing the fifth graders and making that transition. And as Adam said, we've tinkered with it over the years based on our performance data. So yeah, I get that. I still think a Princeton model would be great, but unfortunately, I think the swath of our community just makes it sort of really impossible.
Okay, so Princeton plan. I'm going to just add on to what you said earlier, Hillary, about how you felt dismissed to some of the questions you were asking. I'm going to just say he wasn't just dismissive, but he was utterly offensive, just so that we all are on the same page. He was basically saying certain types of people could not live in certain housing that would have certain number of children. And that was unacceptable. But moving forward, with the plan, I personally also, and this is aside from how he presented or what he was saying in terms of his findings, I was actually hoping that he would find something more than something that we all up here already knew. We knew going in that transportation was going to be the biggest challenge. We knew that. It's not something that we were like, oh, maybe it could happen, maybe it can't. It was, we hired him so that in my understanding of it was that we hired him to look at so that if there was any creative way to figure out how this could be done. So I'm not as pleased as, I don't know if anybody was pleased, but I personally would like to hear what the committee would find in terms of, okay, if, Christine, like what you just said about if transportation was not such a big hurdle, which we already knew. I also do have a problem, and I addressed this when he was presenting, how he changed when he was looking at certain numbers, he changed the formula on a specific grade level because the formula that he was using for everybody else was creating a larger number that he didn't like. So I couldn't really understand that piece either. But I would actually like to see what would it look like? What would it look like? Because there are challenges to it. We knew that. There are lots of different challenges to it. But with the transition to what you shared, Adam, with considerations, that's something that we know. But there's also, like, we could actually, if he came with a different outcome and finding, we might have another slide that says, well, they're in there too long. Everybody's so ready to get out of middle school. Kids can't wait to get to high school for all sorts of reasons, right? So, I mean, I personally would love to see what the committee could find. But is it worth the time and energy and resources? You know, that is a consideration. But it's almost like I almost have more faith in our committee to have found something creative to figure out, or just more than literally everything we already knew. Like literally. So I am very displeased with his presentation and particularly his delivery of it. I'm not commenting on the fact of what his findings were in terms of how it's directing the district, because that's something that we already knew. And that's all I'll say.
And I think I'm with Hillary's broader point about provided that we keep the focus on the middle school experience going. And, you know, I'd love to see another year of that same performance data to sort of back up what you were saying, Adam, about like, okay, going to the two-teacher model rather than the four-teacher model, is that a substantive difference? Push-in supports, co-taught, all the different things. To me, I would rather have the team devote its energy to those things we saw, the 19 things we saw on the list, than this, just given the expediency of it. So I you know, again, I don't want to take our eye off the ball of like what prompted this. And so if this isn't the answer, then what is the answer? And, you know, you've given us a lot of good stuff, and let's just make sure we keep that going.
So maybe what we could do as we work forward here is in June, we plan on coming up with a more comprehensive plan on how to address the middle school experience. And at that point, if the board would like us to go deeper into the Princeton plan model, then we could do that in the summer with a subgroup where we would have more time. That way we can keep the focus on the 19 initiatives that we're working on, and then also come back to this, because there's no urgency with this right now, right? We can come back to this over the summer when we have time to really look at this if our middle school experience presentation, maybe people don't feel is meeting the mark. Does that sound like a good plan? And then I can make sure that we can keep moving forward, but also come back to this over the summer if that's what the board would like us to collectively do at that point. Okay,
Seeing nods.
all right.
We can go.
Thank you. All right, that's it, everybody.
All right.
So that's the end of our presentation, so thank you.
Thank
Only
you for all the
19
effort.
things, come on.
Yeah, I was going to say, only 19. Thank you very much for preparing all of that.
Okay,
It was a lot of work to put it together.
Listen, we've
and
got a
very
lot of people
informative.
working on it, so it's good.
Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
Safety and
No.
security?
You want to do health and safety?
It's up to you, Matt.
We had a Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 21st of January, so that was a week ago today. We discussed a few security addendums and adjustments that we were thinking about making here at Greeley. Just sort of in the beginning phases, we sort of like meted out the pros and cons of each, and that was sort of the crux of the meeting. We broke off into groups, sort of made the lists of the advantages and disadvantages of going forward with certain adjustments to the campus to make it more safe and secure for our kids, and we left it at that, and we meet again in March, April. Provide an update then.
Okay. It's now time for public comment. We,
You don't have anything?
yeah.
Well, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Did Wellness add soup into the, because I'm getting rave reviews from my children that the soup is amazing.
I will pass that on. Which soup in particular are they enjoying?
I'm not sure they know what they're eating, but they are really happy with it.
Well, then I will take full credit for
Okay,
that.
Great, thank you.
Christine, is there a way that we can eat in all of the cafeterias?
The board?
Yes, the Board of Education.
Yes, we can create a dining schedule for you if you'd like.
But I don't want them to change anything just because we're coming.
Yeah, no, we can facilitate that. Josh will work
You
on
want
that.
surprise dining.
Yeah, that's great. We'd love that.
Okay, thank you.
I have lunch at West Orchard probably too often for Mr.
Can we make sure to
That's
do it
not-
when our own
that's not
children are
okay.
eating so that we can surprise
For the
them?
full embarrassment that comes along with that. Yeah, that sounds good. Is it okay if I move us along? Yeah, okay. Public comment. We welcome public comments in respect for each other's time. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Board members may be contacted via email or phone. After the public comment period has been completed, board members may have a discussion amongst themselves regarding the comments presented. Are there any public comments tonight? Going once? Okay, hearing none. Let's go to approvals and ratifications. 3.1 and 3.2 can take together. Can we have a motion to accept the minutes for the January 14th and January 16th meetings?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
I recommend 4.1 instructional as presented.
I'll move 4.1. Can I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
I recommend 4.2 non-instructional as presented.
Can I have a motion for 4.2?
I will move 4.2.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. The consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus preserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. It's recommended the board approve the following consent agenda items as submitted. We have tonight 5.1 through 5.13. Does anyone want to take anything out of the consent agenda tonight? Okay, so can I have a motion then for 5.1 through 5.13?
I'll second.
And just so folks have a sense of this, we've got the typical CSE summaries, we've got the grant that was mentioned, we've got the privacy agreement for the Google services and a variety of other things, just to give folks a flavor of what's in here tonight. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Item 6, we're going to acknowledge receipt of the following contracts approved by the superintendent. 6.1 is an agreement with Kathleen Lynch for the 24-25 school year. Can I have a motion for 6.1?
I will move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Nothing under 7 tonight. Under 8, we're going to acknowledge receipt of 8.1 through 8.4, acknowledging receipt of the treasurer's report for December 2024, the appropriation status report for December 2024, the revenue status report for December 2024, and the quarterly extracurriculum activity fund report for December 24. So I will move 8.1 together through 8.4. Can I have a second for that one?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Future meetings. We'll be together next on February 12th at 7 o'clock, right here, where we'll have the Horace Greeley presentation, and then again, March 5th at 7 o'clock for the superintendent's budget proposal. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn at 8:39?
I'll move.
All those in favor? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.